Tesla stock is up about 3% today, which doesn't sound crazy. That doesn't sound like a particularly crazy day for Tesla. But look at what's happening in the markets today. The Russell 2000 is down 1.2%. The NASDAQ is down 2.2%. The S&P is down 1.4%. And the Dow is down almost 1%. You also have the VIX that is soaring 17.26% today. Tesla up 3% is a crazy strong day on a day like today for the broader markets. Now, before we get into your Tesla stock breaking news today, because there is breaking news for Tesla, let's acknowledge the fact that Tesla bounced at about $310 per share today. Specifically, the low of the day was $309.22. Almost exactly at this line that I've had drawn on the chart for a while now. I was looking for support to come in at that level, and almost as perfectly as it possibly could have, you bounced almost right at that line. You technically bounced at about 309.22. This line is at about 307.81. So you found a lot of support and demand that came in at this level. That does kind of solidify to me, this is just a consolidation trend. This is not the start of a larger sell-off, unless, of course, the markets themselves go through a larger sell-off, in which we'll talk about that possibility throughout this video. First and foremost, what happened today, for the most part, was retail sales. Month over month for October, they actually came in stronger than expected. Retail sales came in at positive 0.4% month over month. Last month was revised up about double, about 100%, from 0.4 to 0.8%. So actually comparing a month over month basis, 0.4% is way stronger than we were expecting, considering we were kind of comparing to last month 0.4%. We actually compared to 0.8%, and it still came in strong at 0.4%. The estimate was 0.3%. So this does push back on the Fed not needing to lower rates. And that's kind of what Powell said yesterday. He said the economy is so strong. Yes, we want to get back to a more neutral stance, but our path is not predetermined. And the economy is doing well, so we don't need to rush to lower rates. This is causing the odds of a 25 basis point rate cut on December 18th to yet again fall today. They were at about 75% odds yesterday after Powell spoke, and they fell today to 63.8%. Although this is not great from the perspective of the Fed cutting rates, I don't really think it's the reason why markets are selling off today. Unfortunately, I think the reason the markets are falling today is a little bit more simplistic than people would like. I think it's simply consolidation from the Trump rally that we have seen so far. The rally just happened so fast in a lot of different areas of our markets that now you're taking a moment to consolidate some of those gains. With the SPY now down to about 585 or so, you've started that process of consolidating the gains. You're actually sitting right at about that 20-day moving average, and it seems likely markets probably start to level out around this area, if not potentially falling back to that 50-day moving average. But at that point, you'd basically give away most of the Trump gains, in which you've kind of already done that so far. So I do think this is more just consolidation than anything else. There's really no thing you can point to today that was negative, unless you say that retail sales being strong is a negative because the Fed's not going to be cutting rates, maybe in December. But the economy's strong. Like, that's what you want. Okay, so that's actually good for equities in the more medium term. There's really nothing you can point to today. In fact, you actually seen some good news. NVIDIA apparently got an upgrade today from UBS and Morgan Stanley. They revised their price targets prior to the earnings report and are calling for an upside of up to 28% in the stock. Now, I talked about this in prior videos, specifically with the VIX. I said, hey, I'm bullish into year end, but if you wanted to kind of create a bearish case on equities. Besides valuation, it was a little bit of complacency in the VIX. Okay, you've seen the VIX fall from 23 right before the election down to less than 14, down to in the 13s in a very short amount of time. It was like, I mean, we were sitting at the lowest risk environment implied by the VIX since July. Okay, that just means nobody was fearful. You know, people got rid of their downside hedges and they said, things are fine now. Even if you're a bull, you can acknowledge there's uncertainty about the economy. There's uncertainty about the Fed. Expectations are high for next year's, economic output and growth and EPS estimates. Like, there is definitely risk out there. We are not in a low risk environment by any means necessary, but the VIX was priced that way. So it makes sense. You get a little bit of consolidation. People flock back into some hedges. That makes sense. And I think that is what is helping to fuel some of the, what I would call excessive downside on no news, because there's really not news today. Now, some people will point out tariffs, and there was some comments back and forth from the Chinese finance minister, as well as some people already in the Biden administration about potentially a new trade war coming about. And yeah, sure, that was not great in 2018. If you recall, if you were invested in markets, stocks sold off heavy heading into Christmas. You were down over 15% on a potential China trade war. And there's still some anxiety about a potential China trade war. And fears are heightened around that, but there really isn't a central catalyst that took place in regards to tariffs. Just some people are saying, oh, well, crap. Maybe things are not as good as we previously thought. Now, we'll get into more market internals in just a moment, but I do want to share with you the news today that is causing Tesla stock to rally 3%. Now, there are some other winners today, okay, like Elf, for an example. They're also doing well, but they are few and far between. Most stocks are in the red today, and pretty deep in the red if you just look out there. Tesla is not one of those. Tesla is up almost 3% today. Now, first and foremost, Ron Barron said this about Tesla today. Quote, "The stock price is the same as it was 3 years ago. Tesla, I think, is going to be worth $5 trillion in 10 years. Elon believes more longer term, $30 trillion. We think this He thinks this Optimus robot is going to be his biggest business ever. No way I'm selling Tesla." Take a listen to what he said here in this clip, because he does elaborate on these things more, and I think it's valuable information, especially considering the stock is reacting positively to this news.
Jump in the stock price makes sense to you as an investor, and what are you doing just in terms of buying and selling?
Well, stock price is the same as it was 3 years ago. So it was higher 3 years ago than it is today, actually.
Yeah.
And the way I think about Tesla is I think that Soares cost, I met him in 2010. It took 4 years before I became convinced to invest in him. He said, "What took you so long?" And we invested $400 million between 2014 and 2016.
Just in Tesla, or is that
just
everything?
In Tesla.
Just in Tesla.
$400 million in Tesla, 14 to 16, and we made about $6 billion in profit so far. And we sold a quarter of our stock in 2020.
Yeah.
3 years ago, 2021, after it had gone up 20 times. And
there were people who questioned you at the time why you were selling 25%. I think you told us that it was because it had gotten to be such a big part of the portfolio.
Yeah, it was too big. It was 20 and up 20 times. And the idea that I wanted to have is I didn't want people to think that I had died, and that's why they still own the stock. So I wanted to make, and by the way, so one of my good friends is Will Danoff, and he is at Fidelity. And I was telling him, I just read something about the people who've done the best in your funds are the people who are dead. Is that true? He says, "Well, I never heard that before, but I'll look it up." So he goes and looks it up. He calls me back the next day. He says, "Well, you challenge me all the time. 3% of my shareholders are dead, and they actually have held it on an average for 18 years, and they're my best performing shareholders."
Well, that goes to your point of you buy things and you hold for very long periods of time.
As long as they're doing well.
Yeah.
And when they're not doing well, or when the fundamentals change, or it becomes too big a percentage of the portfolio,
Well,
we reduce.
you went through a couple of years where you could have classified Tesla as such. You had a couple of rough years, and talk to us in the middle of some of those years over the last 3 years.
Well, 2014 to 2016, when we invested that $400 million, the stock was acting like a yo-yo.
Yeah.
And for the past 3 years, the stock has also been a yo-yo performing stock, because what they're doing is that they're reinvesting in their business. They're penalizing current profitability to become a much bigger business in the future. And whenever that happens, so the reason we've outperformed, so I was telling you before, 97% of our assets do better than the indexes, 94, 95%, top 20%.
You have $45 billion in assets under management right now.
Right.
And that, in terms of what the profits you've paid back to investors since 1992, when the partnership first began, that's $49 billion?
We had $100 million in under management in 1992, $10 million in 1982. Now it's $45 billion, but we've made $49 billion in profits. So we paid people over the past 30 years $4 billion more than we made them, more than they've given us, but we now have $45 billion. I'm hoping that in the next 10 years we can quadruple our assets.
Your faith in Elon Musk sounds like it's stronger than ever. Is this a stock that you would sell? Just from the perspective of if it goes up so much, it's going to be a bigger and bigger part of your portfolio.
So I think that it's right now worth $1 trillion. And what's Bitcoin, $1.7 trillion? So would I rather have 2 Teslas or 1 Bitcoin? So basically, the way I think about it is that Tesla, I think, is going to be worth $3 or $4 trillion, $5 trillion in 10 years, based upon the business plan that I'm aware of. And then Elon believes that longer term, it's going to be worth $30 trillion. It's now being worth $1 trillion.
Do you believe that?
Well, the people from Goldman Sachs were doing something for me. One of the executives in California who's being groomed, I think, to be the next CEO of Goldman Sachs, he and 3 other people from Goldman came to visit me this past summer at my house in East Hampton. And they were telling me, his name is Dan Dees, they were telling me that Elon, Goldman then was struggling to get their business value from 150 billion in the market to 180 billion. So Elon said, why don't you come to my plant in Palo Alto where I have Optimus robots? I want you to see what that is. So he says, so we go there, I take the board and we go out to, he says, Ron, it's dystopian, it's amazing, you gotta go see this. So I went to see it. And there's robots walking all over. And the idea that he has is that, so here we have, there wouldn't be any EVs without him, there wouldn't be any autonomous driving without him, there wouldn't be any rockets you use over and over without him, you wouldn't have any Starlink without him. So the idea is that this Optimus robots, he thinks is gonna be his biggest business ever. And he thinks that, he says everyone's gonna have robots. And my big question was, when I was watching these things walking around and how intelligent they're becoming, super intelligent, I said, well, can they procreate? That's the question I have. And how is that going to happen?
But is this your way of saying, no, you're not going to sell shares of any of your companies or your investments in?
No. Just to, if they get too big, then I'll have to trim a little bit, but no. Yeah. I have no intention.
You brought up Bitcoin. And
so let me just go ahead and translate that into something simpler. Ron Barron is saying the opportunity in Tesla is so large that today, no matter if he is right or Elon is right, or perhaps even if they're both 50% wrong, that puts Tesla in the $2.5 to $15 trillion market cap range. The opportunity is so large in Tesla that he cannot afford to or in good conscience sell Tesla stock anytime soon. And he says the only way that he's going to sell Tesla is if the stock goes up so much it becomes such a large portion of the fund, which perhaps is a good problem to have if that happens. Now, the other news that is positively affecting Tesla stock today is a new price target upgrade. RBC Capital Analyst Tom Narian, has raised his Tesla price target to $313 from $249. Tesla recently hosted Wall Street investors at Giga Texas. RBC says the sessions gave it increasing confidence in Tesla's ability to achieve its autonomy goals and highlighted the comparative advantage it has over both legacy ICE and EV makers in building cars. Which is something you can say a lot of retail investors, so, a lot of other guys on Wall Street just don't have the opportunity to do. I mean, I'm sure this wasn't like a ton of analysts on Wall Street, right? It's only some that were able to go to Giga Texas. And it kind of highlights that if you're there, if you're seeing this in person, it's probably a lot better than the outsider's perspective sees. With that said, we have other news as well today. Some Tesla, some non-Tesla specifics, including this. A Toyota executive pushes back on U.S. policies promoting EV adoption. Quote, "The whole EV ecosystem is ahead of the consumer. It's not in alignment with consumers. It's just not. The push for EV adoption is also contributing to the current affordability crisis in the car market." And I know they're not talking about Tesla here because Tesla actually sells cars lower than the average ICE vehicle. GM self-driving car unit Cruise admitted on Thursday to submitting a false report to influence a federal investigation and will pay a $500,000 criminal fine. Cruise failed to disclose key details of a 2023 crash to the NHTSA when one of its robotaxis struck a pedestrian. I guess that's the perks of lobbying. If you did that, you're off to prison. Instead, a $500,000 fine is reasonable if you lobby the right people. As of last night, Tesla began offering 3 months of free supercharging and 3 months of FSD supervised for new inventory orders in North America delivered by the end of this year. All sexy cars and the Cybertruck are eligible. I also think part of today's rally in Tesla stock, again relative to the broader market, is insane on a adjusted numbers basis. This is like the equivalent of Tesla rallying like 7 to 10% if the markets were flat. Right? So today's move higher is huge in those respective terms. I think part of it has to do with the realization that Elon actually thinks the removal of the $7,500 tax credit for EVs is going to be a positive for Tesla. And Wall Street kind of freaked out yesterday about that. And as we digest that information a little bit more, crunch some numbers, perhaps Wall Street's saying maybe Elon's correct. Maybe this $7,500 tax credit going away is actually going to be a positive for Tesla. Elon Musk has long talked about this. 3 years ago, he said, quote, "We, as in Tesla, don't need the $7,500 EV tax credit. Do we need support for gas stations? We don't. There's no need for support for charging networks. I'm literally saying get rid of all subsidies, but also for oil and gas." Elon Musk also said 4 months ago, "Take away the subsidies. It will only help Tesla. Also remove subsidies from all industry." And Sawyer Merritt did run a poll on his X account with currently 18,000 votes. And he asked, long term, is Trump getting rid of the $7,500 federal EV credit bullish, bearish, or neutral for Tesla? 43% say bullish, 17.8% say bearish, 28.5% say neutral impact. That's also what I voted because I think at least for a while, it's only going to look neutral, right? It could take years for competition to get penalized or be in a dramatically worse situation via the removal of the $7,500 tax credit. I don't think we'll know if it's really bullish or bearish for Tesla for quite a long time. That's why I say it's probably at best a neutral impact in the more immediate midterm. But this question was about long term, and if you're thinking long term, which I consider long term like 10 years, then I would say it's bullish for Tesla. But most people don't think about long term as in 10 years. Most people think like 3 to 5 years. in which 3 to 5 years, I would say this is more of a neutral impact. And in totally non-Tesla news today, Elon Musk at Mar-a-Lago with Trump addressing the crowd at the America First Gala says, quote, "I think this is going to be the most transformative presidency since the founding of this country." The lead Cybertruck engineer, Wes Morrill, and indirectly the whole Cybertruck team, just made the Times top 100 most influential climate leaders in business for 2024. Time says, quote, "In the years since its launch last November, Cybertruck has become the best-selling EV pickup in the US, surpassing more tenured rivals despite its hefty $100,000 price tag." Tesla's Megapack X account writes this: 125 megawatt, 250 megawatt hour Megapack project operated by Autobidder has been energized in North Texas to support grid stability and manage accelerating load growth in ERCOT. And that does equate to about $60 million of Megapack revenue. Barstool Sports on X writes, "Are Cybertrucks ugly?" And it's this TikTok from some podcast, and its girl asked the question.
Can I just?
And they say it's ugly. It's very ugly. The Cybertruck X account says, "And yet rent-free in everyone's head." Basically saying, matter if it's ugly or not, your opinions on it, you still know about it because it's just that unique, which is the whole concept of Tesla's truck to begin with. That's what it was designed to do, is to be a polarizing product. Thus, I mean, if these girls are talking about the Cybertruck, I think we have more of a halo effect to come. In fact, I don't even think the halo effect has even started yet, and it's long been something people stopped talking about. And I think we should start talking about it. Like, what are the odds that we do see a Cybertruck halo effect? I think they're pretty large at this point. We could start to see that in 2025. After all, the Cybertruck is by far the most searched about Tesla product over the past 12 months. You can see the average is 50 here on Google Trends. The next best searched Tesla product is the Model Y, and that's at 26, almost 50% lower than the Cybertruck. Now, just more narrow into what we are currently seeing for Google Trends. Cybertruck ramping higher from 33 to 34, but it's really the Model Y, the Model 3, and the other Tesla products that are stealing the spotlight away from the Cybertruck. The Model Y went from 21 to 25 in just the past 2 weeks or so, 1.5 weeks or so. The Model 3 went from 18 to 22. The Model S even went from 9 to 11, and the Model X went from 7 to 8. These are very good Google Trends that you are seeing. If you look at worldwide, Cybertruck continues higher at 42. Model Y is also moving higher to 36. Model 3 is moving to 32, all of which is an uptick, or uptrend at least. The Model S now at 14, and the Model X at 9, which is the highest the Model S has been at since at least early October. And before then, you have to go back to like midsummer to see the Model S this high on worldwide Google Trends. Things are looking pretty good for Tesla right now. I can't lie. Now, option activity for Tesla stock today also looks very good from hedge funds and institutions. You have 205 different trades totaling $131.14 million with a positive order value of 83%. It's continuing just to be very, very bullish. Now, considering today is Friday, the last week of option activity in Tesla from Big Money had 3,358 different trades, totaling $3.24 billion, with a positive order value of 81%. That is extremely bullish for a 1 week period. Now, Tesla's short interest of free float sits at 2.79%, with $24.27 billion currently sold short in the stock, totaling 78 million shares that are currently sold short. You can see on the day today, you have return shares of 1.44 million, borrowed shares of 2.07 million. That means you got about 629,000 shares today that are on net being sold short. CNN's Fear and Greed Index is at 50, which is exactly neutral. This is the biggest one-day drop in this index, CNN's Fear and Greed index that you have seen in a long time. Yesterday, you were at 60. So you dropped 10 points from 60 down to 50 in just one day, which I can't recall that happening outside of like August 5th, where you had the yen carry trade kind of blowing up, or other just huge down days for markets. So it does seem like the attitude in markets has shifted quite a bit today. Now, the percent of stocks currently trading above their 50-day moving average is down to 54.53%. You do have about 3.7% of all stocks falling below their 50-day moving average today. And I do think this overall consolidation was overdue. As far as the AI investor sentiment survey that came out November 13th, that was on, well, Wednesday, but we get the numbers on Thursday. It was at 49.8% of investors were bullish. That's almost your one-year high, which goes back to the week ending December 20th, 2023. So almost the highest level of bulls you have seen throughout all of 2024. Neutral investors at 21.8% and bearish investors at 28.3%. You were kind of overdue for some kind of consolidation of the recent gains that we have seen in markets. Sentiment over on StockTwits for Tesla is bearish at 33 today. Yesterday, you were neutral at 49. Again, surprising considering Tesla stock is massively outperforming the broader markets. Message volume today is high at 62. Yesterday was normal at 52, which is a great sign. Participation ratio is normal at 54. In the next video, we will have a deeper dive into Tesla stock, specifically what I'm expecting now, given the new information that we have. The price action that we have for today kind of does change things a little bit for markets, but I will give you my perspective on Tesla and broader markets in the next video coming out at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time tonight. Grab yourself a beer, grab yourself a coffee, whatever you like, sit back, relax, and enjoy that video. Hopefully it provides you a lot of perspective and serves your portfolio well. Ladies and gentlemen, that is it for this video. Enjoy the rest of your day. Stay safe out there, and I will see you in the next one.